Okay, my dear. So once again, very warm welcome to this seminar, the Eco and Bioart Lab seminar that actually takes place on a day that is marked as a holiday in Sweden and perhaps in some other places too. But nothing is better than intellectual stimulation, and I think that today's session will actually provide us with that in abundance. Right, so the title is From Bedrock to Deadrock, the Arts of Anti-Uranium Activism, with Dr. Marko Marila, as a speaker, and Katja Aglert, senior lecturer at Konstfack, who is the respondent. And of course, I just want to say that the seminar really forms part of a series of Eco and Bioart Lab seminars, webinars, under the kind of, working title Lithic Ecologies, because of its focus on a kind of, inorganic, modern human and often earthly matters. So without further ado, I also want to actually introduce the speaker and the respondent, and also maybe I should also note that this seminar, again, sort of embodies a form or format of a kind of, creative dialogue in a sense. So we'll have, informal, in a kind of more formal ways, we'll have a longer presentation, and then the kind of, critical creative response from Katja, and a kind of element of dialogue. Then we might or might not have a little break, depending, whether your bodies need to stretch or, do whatever else they might need to do. And then we will return to a kind of, open discussion. So let me, say those few words, basically biograms. So Marko Marila is a researcher and educator based in Linköping, Sweden. He holds a PhD in history and philosophy of archaeology, and has also taught and published in the fields of heritage studies, semiotics, and artistic research. His creative work often combines archaeological sensibilities with the practices of contemporary art, and Marko's current research at Linköping University deals with the histories, heritages, and archaeologies of uranium mining and connected social movements. So we will learn a lot about that today. And of course, the respondent is also the Eco and Bioart Lab member and renowned Stockholm-based artist, Katja Aglert, who is also a senior lecturer of fine art at Konstfack, University of Arts, Crafts and Design in Stockholm. And in the years 2020 to 2022, Katja was also professor of art at Linköping University, Sweden. So for 20 years, she has explored transdisciplinary, often collaborative processes situated in feminist and modern human imaginaries. Her exhibitions include Flora Ars plus Natura in Bogota, Marabou Park in Stockholm, Museum of Contemporary Art, Santiago de Chile. Right. So after having, said those words, I'm basically passing the baton to Marko, and we'll indulge in From Bedrock to Deadrock. Okay, Marko.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introductions, and thank you again for the invitation to give this talk. And also Katja, already, I thank you for, first of all, you have already read something that I wrote, and now you will hear what I have done for the past year or so. So let me just clean up the screen a bit.
Super. Now we see the slide.
Perfect. So now you should be seeing nuclear natures. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. Thank you. So as Marietta said, my name is Marko Marila. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Linköping University, and I work in a research project called Nuclear Natures. So this is a a project led by Professor Anna Storm. It's a 6-year project, and it's also 6 of us. In addition to Anna, there's a couple of PhD students and 3 of us postdoctoral researchers. And so the project itself, in general, looks into nuclear power and the types of natures that nuclear power production creates or leaves behind. And as there's a recent publication online in the niche web publication. You can use that QR code to read that if you want to read 6 short stories on nuclear natures. But as part of the research project, my research lately, or within that project, my research has dealt with the history and also the heritage and archaeology of uranium production, mainly in Finland. And for example, sites that I visited include this legacy mine of Paukkajanvaara, which is basically where the Finnish uranium production started in the late 50s. It was sort of an experimental project that produced some uranium that was then sold to Sweden. And I just take as an example what some of the heritage sites or archaeological sites of uranium production might look like today. Basically, this site was rehabilitated in the 90s, and it basically looks like an old sand pit, an overgrown sand pit today. But what I will talk about today is not the history of uranium production and mining per se, but the sort of counterforce of uranium production. The social movements that have formed to oppose uranium mining and prospecting in Finland. And especially the type of art that was produced as part of those social movements. And this talk will sort of be divided into two parts. First, I will talk about this Finnish artist called Pessi Manner, a mason who created anti-uranium mining artworks in Finland in the early 2000s. And at the end of the talk, I will talk about my own artistic practice as pertains to researching the histories of anti-uranium mining social movements. So Pessi Manner was a mason, a sculptor, and an artist. He was originally from Helsinki and became involved in these anti-uranium mining social movements that took form in different parts of Finland in the early 2000s. Oh, okay. So there's as a sort of signaling and a nod to previous research in nuclear and atomic art. Many of you probably know these books, but these are just here to give a couple of examples of the type of art or artistic research and art that has been produced in connection to the nuclear culture and nuclearity, and including uranium mining. But that was sort of in a wrong place in a sense. But I just want to include it as a sort of acknowledgement of the field of research that deals with the arts of the atomic age. Let's put it that way. So, what prompted these social movements to take form in Finland in the early 2000s, and then in turn artists' involvement, artists like Pessi Manner, was this huge spike or increase in the global price of uranium starting in the early 2000s. So you can see that basically from 2004 2005 the price just starts to like climb like crazy, and this then brought for the first time also international mining companies to Finland, and these mining companies started these very aggressive and comprehensive prospecting activities in different parts of Finland, including the areas around Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland, so-called Uusimaa region. Very active prospecting in eastern Finland, but also in northern Finland. And in this map, and through that QR code, this will take you to the map. So if you feel like visiting some of these sites that I'm talking about, the detailed locations of those sites can be found on that map. But this is sort of the geographical region that we're talking about, and the locations of Pessi Manner's artworks. But there are also some other artworks, but I will be talking about Pessi Manner now. So Manner had this objective to create rock art in each of the municipalities that were threatened by uranium mining, where some of these international mining companies had claims and where they were prospecting for uranium. And so these were commissioned works by the local social movements that took form in southern Finland, eastern Finland, and northern Finland. And so Pessi Manner became involved in a few of these movements, and he was commissioned to produce rock art. So the type of art that he created were these large-scale rock carvings. This is one of the earliest ones. It's called luonto vastaa, which means in English that's like nature responds. And this is actually located close to the old uranium mine that I showed pictures of, this Paukkajanvaara mine. So it's also, we're talking about this sort of like historical baggage that comes with the history of uranium production in the area. And now after 40 years, the mining companies were again, this time international mining companies coming from outside of Finland. So this was the direct response to those prospecting activities and the type of art that, or at least the type of enduring art that was produced as part of those social movements. Of course, they had like concerts and demonstrations and as part of those different types of art were produced, but I'm mainly looking at rock art today, or exclusively looking at rock art today. This is another artwork of Manner's. It's called Runo Poem. Again, very close to the previous one, and also close to the Paukkajanvaara mine. And one of the most striking, so already you can see that the sun sort of becomes a very common motif in Manner's art. And most, except one, this luonto vastaa, nature response radiation symbol, all of the other carvings, and there are altogether 6 anti-uranium mining rock carvings created by Pessi. So 5 of those are of this sun motif, and one of them is a radiation symbol. So this becomes the common motive, and the intention behind, or the motivation behind these artworks was, of course, to increase visibility for these social movements and increase the citizens' knowledge and awareness of the possible environmental and health risks of uranium prospecting, but also uranium mining, if that should ever take place again in Finland. They were really successful. They did, in fact, gather a lot of following, or create a lot of following for these social movements. They were routinely covered in newspapers, and so they really succeeded in what they were set out to do, create more awareness and get more people behind these causes. And in analyzing why and how Pessi Manner succeeded in creating such impact with his artworks, I've analyzed these artworks in the context of prehistoric rock art, Finnish prehistoric rock art, which is, there are no rock carvings from the prehistoric period, but there are rock paintings from the prehistoric period in Finland. And I'm sort of basing my analysis of the impact of and the power of these anti-uranium mining rock carvings on theories from prehistoric rock art studies. And recent theories on rock art stress the sort of like animistic ontologies of prehistoric these Stone Age people. That's in the upper right corner. That's an example of what an example of a site that would lead Stone Age art researchers to state that these cosmologies were animistic. The rock art was chosen, the location for the rock art was chosen based on these anthropomorphic features of the rock face, and the rock art itself was produced as a result of revisiting a place, interacting with it, and making it important. Or the fact that rock art was created was that locations were considered important, and the landscape and the rock itself was considered alive. So this is one of my arguments, that in creating his rock art, Manner was tapping into this sort of like ancestrality of the landscape and creating a very embodied and effective connection between our feeling bodies, the materiality of rock, and a landscape in need of protection. And this is Manner in 2009 visiting, after the uranium rush had sort of like waned. All of the mining companies left Finland in starting around that time, and by 2011, all of the companies had shifted their focus into other minerals like gold, or left Finland altogether. So he was very aware of this, of creating this connection to the landscape by using this type of like ancestral imagery and idea of the ancestrality of rock and landscape. Of course, one should not forget the later developments that have taken place when it comes to creating an emotional landscape and connecting people to a landscape. This is again close to the Paukkaanvaara mine. This is the same area in eastern Finland, the two artworks that I showed. And one of the so-called national landscapes of Finland called Koli. And Koli became, in the course of from starting in the late 1800s and in the course of the 1900s, Koli became a very important element to the nationalistic sort of identity of Finnishness. So there's this aspect to the landscape that we shouldn't overlook. This is one of the, again, national painters of Finland, Eero Järnefelt, Maisema Kolilta, from 1928, landscape from Koli, or view from Koli. And in connection to this ancestrality aspect of Manner creating rock art and tapping into these sort of like ideas of a national landscape that is ours somehow, there's another aspect that sort of follows from the uranium mining and the type of like resource nationalism that should also maybe that I should take up. This idea of a national landscape and its preservation became a very central argument to these social movements, also in southern Finland and in northern Finland, but most importantly in eastern Finland. The preservation of especially Koli and the landscape of Koli. And so that's the type of like long durée of the Finnish landscape that Manner was tapping into and sort of like playing with his art. And just to summarize that it really helped in creating following for these social movements. Okay, so that's that is the art historical part of my research. So what I've mainly studied is the history of these anti-uranium mining social movements and the rock art, mainly the rock art that was produced as part of those social movements. But I've also had the opportunity to do artistic research on this topic, and in a sense, so this is the example is that I will take up one example of such art that I've had the privilege of collaborating. So I've had the privilege of collaborating with Tea Andreoletti, an Italian artist. So the performance that I now will be talking about took place in Finland last autumn at the Anti Contemporary Art Festival in September 2023. So there, so we collaborated. I know Thea from before, and heard that she's working on uranium and creating art that's connected to uranium mining, or the history of uranium mining and its social opposition. So she asked me to collaborate with her on a performance in Finland last year called Yellow Cake. And this was a 4-hour performance that took place 3 times over 5 days. And the rationale for this whole, so Thea has already performed this 2 times before we collaborated for Yellow Cake, and her motivation, or the larger context of Thea's art practice, in which this Yellow Cake should be seen, is she's from northern Italy, from a town called Gromo, and her artistic practice mainly consists of running for mayor in the town of Gromo in 2026. And the main objective of running for mayor, so she has created an art collective in that area in northern Italy around Gromo, and an area called Alta Val Seriana. So the idea is to run for mayor in Gromo in order to more effectively, through art practice, address some social issues that the area is struggling with, like lack of funding and lack of school opportunities, lack of resources, developmental, like real estate projects taking over, creating environmental challenges, and so on and so on. And the problem that Thea sees in this area is that all of the small villages that make up the area of Alta Valle Seriana, these small villages are not really working together in order to first of all address and solve these social issues and political issues and problems that are plaguing the area. So Yellow Cake becomes a way of reviving and remembering the memories of a 1970s anti-uranium movement that took place in Alta Val Seriana. So the performance itself asks, what can we do together if we use history and memory as a force, as a fuel or force for social change, and so the performance becomes a remembering of the memories of that 1970s anti-uranium mining movement in northern Italy, and it does so through the preparation of a communal lunch. So over 5 days, on 3 occasions for this 4-hour performance, we had about 30 members of audience or participants in the performance each day. So 30 people are divided into 5 groups, and each of these 5 groups has a specific task that aims towards the preparation of a communal lunch. For example, one group in the upper right corner, you see a fireplace outside. This group of 5 or so people prepares, or 6 people prepares polenta for the lunch. Another group prepares side dishes like vegetables sourced from the area. There are other groups that might look more closely into the actual memories or the historical documents that survive from the 1970s. One group created, for example, these banners, and one of the groups with which I worked for the duration of the performance looked into the history of a sort of a comparative history of and what you see in this picture on the left, there's a type of a timeline, a comparative timeline between the 1970s anti-uranium movement in Alta Valseriana, and on the left, on the right is a timeline of uranium mining and its opposition, so like social resistance in Finland. So through this sort of a comparative case study, these members of the audience get to know the history of uranium production and its social opposition. And then after spending a couple of hours together with separately in each of the groups then convened for this communal lunch. And of course the whole performance plays with this connection between uranium, the yellow cake, the product of uranium mining, or the refined product of uranium mining when the uranium is separated from the ore, is called yellow cake. So that's where the name comes from. But it plays with this connection between polenta, which is a corn porridge, type of corn porridge that's very common to northern Italy. It plays with this connection between energy coming from the earth and something that's in a way like creates this connection to earth through resemblance, polenta, that we eat during the performance. And so during the communal lunch, the participants then get to share with others what they learned in that small group during the preparation of the lunch. And for example, the members of the group that I led, where we had this sort of like detective's wall diagram. So they were tasked with sharing whatever like stuck with them from this experience with others. And on one day, the group prepared a sort of like 1 minute of silence before we had lunch, and it became this like a moment of reflecting on where the food is sourced from, the temporalities of preparing food, and the history of gastronomy, and all like the geographies and temporalities of producing energy and consuming energy. I think it was a very fitting sort of like element, a nice element to the lunch. So the whole idea is of yellow cake for Thea is to remember this the effects and power of working together and doing something together, and the social force and the potential for of doing things together as a social force. And you might wonder why there are no pictures of the audience, and the documentation sort of sucks, or the photo documentation sort of sucks at least. And that's because Thea documents her artistic practice and the pieces of these like elements of her artistic practice in what is called a Sunday dress. So this is the type of documentation that will survive of this installation of yellow cake becomes like a embroidered image in her Sunday dress. So that's the type of that's the form of documentation that she does. That's her part of her artistic practice, or documenting her own artistic practice. And I think in a very nice fashion, it again connects us to the materialities of these memories, and the very materiality of also the material and very real effects of working together, so that the documentation will not be just buried in external hard drives, or lost in some library or paper archive, but becomes a lived archive that is worn and used. So the idea is to unite the villages in Gromo, hopefully through that create social change. Okay, I think that's what I had. Thank you for listening, and I very much look forward to what Katja has to say.
Thank you so much, Marko. A big applause. And I'm actually kind of now trying to add some extra pins to the screen. So I think we can close the slideshow, maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
And I will give the floor to Katja.
Let me just I have to find a way to
Always technicalities.
See my controls again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they can be really tricky sometimes to close
because I have had to hide the control panel so that I see my own slides, and now
exactly
stop share.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so much once again. And Katja, the floor is yours.
You. Okay, great. Thank you. So I have 10 minutes. I'm just gonna set my alarm so I don't overshare too much. Okay, thank you so much, Marietta and Marko, for this invitation, and really the trust, Marko, to read and respond to your text. I'm suddenly wondering now, when I listen to your presentation about the participants here today, if everyone has read what I have read, and if that's not the case,
only you read, my dear, and I, because I'm too curious, so I always read.
Okay. So it might be a bit abstract then for those of you who haven't read, and hopefully that might still be enriching in some kind of way. Let's see. But anyway, for you, Marko, I hope that this will have some meaningful contribution to the continuous work of working with your article that you have shared with me. So, well, just before, so when I have read your material, I have read it from an artistic point of view, I would say, mainly or only. So it's with that kind of filter that I have looked at this. And when I read, it struck me that it operates on several levels, where in my responses, I have thought mainly of kind of two levels, I guess, where one is the article itself and the composition, the structure, the content of that as a material space and articulation. And the other level is some of the artistic processes that you discuss through the text. And I will try, as I said when we talked a little bit before, but I'm saying it now again just to kind of also be clear to the, hopefully be clear to the other participants here in the room, that I will be as clear as possible about what level I speak about when I comment on these different things. It has been very exciting to read about all these entanglements that you write about in the article, like on a general level. The kind of topic that you dive into is by no means my field of expertise. But what I think I can, bring in some, I don't know, reflection based on my own practices is of course social art, performance art in different ways, practices of documentation, participatory practices. That's just some of the like workshopping as art, so there are some things that I can hopefully share some insights. I have prepared just a little intro. So this article is to me a lively journey and an artistic work story, to use a term that the artist Magnus Bertos coined to describe the kinds of stories that are behind every work of art. And for me, the article unfolds the rhizome temporalities, spaces, relations, and events that eventually have led to this common denominator, which is the collaborative performance lecture, Yellow Cake. And I want to add now, since I heard your presentation, that this might actually be a misunderstanding from my side, but this is how I read your article, at least, that the kind of collaborative component was primarily the lecture performance Yellow Cake, which in turn is a tentacle to the long-term ongoing social art and participatory performance project Yellow Cake, initiated by Thea. So there's some kind of, like individual project encountering collaborative project, becoming collaborative project, and going back to individual project that I like, but it has also confusing parts to it, I believe, which can be good. But anyway, so the article to me performs through its structure a logic similar to the way that the two of you have created this spatial and nonlinear diagram in your performance lecture. So this logic is very interesting to me in relation to the objectives that you discuss in your article, and in the sense that it challenges any kind of simplified and straightforward way to tell stories related to your process. And as I hinted already, that however, as a consequence, to me sometimes it becomes a little bit unclear, and especially in relation to like who speaks. And I can get into some of the more concrete examples towards the end of my responding here. And we can perhaps discuss possibilities in ways that one can work with this in other possible ways, perhaps. But so I have now like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 more like topical comments that we can that I want to share, where the first one has to do with this notion social art and participatory art, which to me, when I read the article, seem very central. And I'm wondering, like, if perhaps, you know, it is so important that it should be even part of the title, because it's the title now kind of indicates nothing that relates to art. Yeah, so this is something that just strikes me. But also in relation to the first sentence of the introduction, which begins with a question. How does one begin, and I quote you now here, Marko, how does one begin to investigate archaeologically something that escapes archaeological attention altogether, end quote. And then after I have read this article, I'm wondering, what role can social art and participatory performance have in relation to this question? I think that you could kind of, you know, bring the artistic dimension into the article more directly by actually putting that like artistic method, I guess, in relation to that first question. And there are also some other parts in the text where, for instance, when Tia speaks on page 4 about her own practice, then socially engaged art and performance comes in very, very centrally and strongly. So it's so embedded throughout the whole text. And what I notice is that you speak about artistic research, artistic practice, and contemporary art. And I'm wondering, you know, or I'm asking myself if you would be more like consistently speaking about socially engaged art or social practices or participatory performance, which seem to be the kind of methods that you use. Would it be like a more of a consistency? I don't know, but this is something that I want to share that I have been thinking about when reading. And the other thing I was thinking about was, yeah, this on page 2, you state that you speak about this notion that you have in that you're using an archive and what that could do for your project. And you say something like what an archive could imply then, and I quote you now, is the development of archives and archival methods that do not conform to the, quote, alienating hegemony of order, end quote, imposed, for example, by 200 years of archaeological typology. And here you suggest contemporary art practice, for instance, could be particularly useful in suggesting creative forms of an archiving. And then I'm wondering, you know, if contemporary art isn't also very well invested in the archives and archival methods that do conform to the alienating hegemony. I've always so hard time to say that, hegemony of order. So I'm wondering if there is some kind of contradiction there with that kind of comment. I think my 10 minutes are up, and I've only come to my third point. I'm so sorry about this.
You know, as I said, I mean, I'm not a time Nazi, but I mean, like, I don't know if maybe Marko wants to kind of like, you know, respond to some of those. And I mean, like, you know, we can kind of have a bit more of a dialogue here. I mean, that's, you know, depends how you feel actually as well.
But already,
yeah, I mean,
all of this sounds super helpful. And I'm like, yeah, makes sense. All of the points. I can already say, like, even if we don't have time, like I would love to continue this. Of course, it also depends on how other people, because they haven't read the paper. So so basically, this was a paper about yellow cake. If that wasn't wasn't clear, that Katja is reacting to. But I mean, already based on this, like, I want to hear the other points, and if we don't have time, we have to.
I would say let's
do it
use
over.
this. Yeah, but I mean, I would say we can still use some of the time, and then just have like a short stretch break or something. So I think that we are in a quite intimate small number of people here. So I think that why not to go for it, so to speak.
Let's do that.
Okay, so shall I just continue then? Is that what we agreed on, or okay? So yeah, I mean, because it was so exciting to read this article, because it also, I mean, I must say that it resonates also with many of the things that I struggle with. So of course, it's always very, exciting to kind of feel engaged, because these are the kind of things that one have been thinking about oneself. But okay, so my next point. So did you get the point about the like the alienating hegemony of order, and how that how contemporary art is also very kind of invested in this? Yeah, good.
yes, absolutely, I did.
Yeah, okay. So and then so I became very excited about the fact that you're using conversation as a form for writing this article. And I was wondering, would it be relevant to comment on this, like to comment on why you actually use this form, to as a form to share research? And so I was thinking about the performativity of text and the choice of form method for sharing research. Is there a particular connection to an archiving here? And so I would kind of, I think that would be probably quite interesting to think if there is such a connection, and write about the conversation as form and the choice of this particular method in relation to the topics addressed. Because when I'm reading, I'm kind of intuitively sensing that there are so many precisely, as the same, like the structure with your installation for their performance lecture, that there's something about your choice of conversation as form that is very linked to your critiquing of this, general form of archiving. Because of course the article in itself is also a form of archiving. So kind of to reflect maybe on some kind of meta level in relation to that choice. So I think I also had, in relation to, on page 5, you say something about the idea of creating memories includes a strong element of historical and even archaeological thinking. Then this idea of conversation again came to me, that there's something about the conversation and its everydayness, which for me seem related to the shaping of new memories, which here you tie to archaeological thinking. So does this mean that the choice of conversation as form has relevance, both as method to the top, both as and for, relevance both as for, relevance as method to the topic of an archaeology? So I think that there is something there, definitely, maybe to look into. And then I just want to say that I appreciated very much the kind of the description about the way that the food sessions unfolded with the 5 groups, and how you write about the conversations that are prompted by the participants of the performances, and particularly the one where temporalities of the uranium and the food and cooking came up, and how that created this very beautiful relationship in relation to the title. So this is maybe something that could be I don't know, teased out more even, because it's such a strong component, I think, to the story of these artworks. Well, now I'm getting down really into details here. Maybe I should just say something about the structure of the text. Okay, so the introduction is fairly like academically oriented, like a you know, the kind of the voice of the two authors introducing the more like historical and political context for the artwork, without particularly going into the arts or the art-related practices too much, but it's more like a political, historical, anti-uranium movement, social movement oriented introduction, I would say. Then it moves over to this conversation part where you and Thea speak, and it begins with, and it's there that I sense that it's almost moving from a collective voice between you and Thea to you more interviewing Thea in a way. It's like you take the lead somehow more than in the previous part. And sometimes you speak with the we, like from the position of we, and sometimes, especially when Thea speaks, she speaks from the position of I. And it becomes kind of clearer the more that one reads that Yellow Cake is, or at least this is how I understand it, I must say, that Yellow Cake is a project that is initiated by her for like initially, like years ago, and then that you choose to collaborate in a little tentacle of it, which happens in Finland last year. And you also include an activist group in this collaboration. So it's like a very unique, like context sensitive collaboration that happened within the framework of Yellow Cake. And this is kind of storied quite far into the text. So one have to kind of, so I'm just wondering about, so I guess I have a suggestion for how to try to write, to experiment with how to write a text. Like begin with that moment of the lecture performance and describe what you described there. And then from there, kind of walk back in time and describe how you got there. Because then as a reader, one has already the image of where it will land, so to speak, in that collaboration. And then from there, you can explain everything else, walking backwards, so to speak. I think that, well, this is just how I think that it will be, still have that kind of very rhizome, very tentaclic and messy and tangled, work story that this actually is, and which I love. But at the same time, make it a little bit easier for the viewer to feel invited and not have such a long transportsträcka, like a road, like what is transport? Do you know transportsträcka? What is in English? Do you speak Swedish? No.
I speak some Swedish, but this term is like, I have a vague idea of what it could mean. But
okay, I'll try to say it in English. It's like a very far, like walking distance before you actually get to some place.
Destination, so it's kind of the way around, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
A detour or something.
Or a transition.
A detour,
or
yeah, precisely.
Detour.
Yeah, precisely. So to kind of be very careful about keeping the rhizome and tentaclic feeling, but at the same time, present some kind of stage that actually is the collaboration, so that we understand that that's where it happened. So I think I'll stop there. I mean, I have some more comments about documentation and maybe a contradiction, but I think those are very detailed things, and we should also let the audience in maybe to, comment or so. Thanks so much. I hope some of this was helpful.
Thank you. Absolutely. I think like you raised some, basically all of it. I was like frantically writing down these things because I want to remember them and I want to address them in the text. Beginning with this, like, what an oversight! Like, why not include, well, like you say in the title, like include something that makes the reader already think that this has to do with art. And I guess many of the things, like the sort of like the problems of the text, like of being in between things, I suppose they follow from this, like there's me mainly working as an archaeologist, or like, and also the text having been commissioned for an archaeology book, but like a weird archaeology book where you don't have to do archaeology in order for it to make sense. And then we're trying to do something artistic. So maybe a lot of these problems maybe follow from trying to not being sure who is the audience, or like, are we doing archaeology? Are we talking to archaeologists? Are we talking to artists? And how do we navigate this space between the like two disciplines in a sense? And yeah, I don't have to go over the points. I think they all make sense, and I really want to address them. Yeah, really good points. Thank you. This was super helpful.
Nice. I mean, I can totally relate to what you're saying. I've myself been like a liminal creature for many years. I think currently, since I'm working mainly now with my own artistic practice plus working in an art academy, I feel less how can you say, like all over the place, because I'm much more invested in the arts right now. But already the arts is transdisciplinary in nature. So, but when being in a context like Linköping that you are now, and which I've also been, of course, this exaggerates this feeling of being, like, so it's I can totally feel with you. I have been, struggling so much with these things.
Mm.
But also in relation to this, I also want to mention, I have a couple of, I have 3 references that I thought, because it's also like cooking, it's also so central. And also, I think Thea speaks about this idea of artistic practice as like more real than art. And then I wanted to I wonder if you have, if you know about Living as Form by Nato Thompson. Do you know about that? It's an anthology. It started as a really, really big exhibition around 2010, I think. And then it turned into a publication that came out 2012. And I mean, I can just read just a quote from it. It's about socially engaged art from 91 to 2011, initiated and edited by Nato Thompson. And over the past 20 years, an abundance of art forms have emerged that use aesthetics to affect social dynamics. These works are often produced by collectives or come out of community contexts. They emphasize participation, dialogue, and action, and appear in situations ranging from theater to activism to urban planning to visual art to healthcare. Engage with the texture of living, these artworks often blur the line between art and life. And this the book offers the first global portrait of a complex and exciting mode of cultural production. And I mean, I've read it many years ago, and I find it, absolutely mind-blowing when it comes to gives insights into these, lived art practices. So I think that could be very interesting for you to kind of, I don't know if it could contribute to this article, but I mean, in general, just in relation to what you do, I think you would appreciate it. And also looking back a little bit, Rirkri Tiravania's cooking practices from 90, like he started them 92. Do you remember those, or have you heard of them?
I don't think so.
He's a Thai artist from Thailand. He started making cooking sessions, and I mean also there are some other, of course, earlier from the 70s, but Rydkrit's practice came to mind because he was also very invested in social practices and making, like, shaping communities in through his artwork in Thailand, as well as in the US. So that can also be interesting and just to look into as a reference. And now a contemporary example is, of course, cooking sections. And I think I saw that Caroline Elg is one of the participants here today, and she curated a show at Bonnier's Konsthall here recently with them. So she would be the expert, of course, to talk about cooking sections. But I wanna mention them because they explore the overlapping boundaries between art, architecture, and ecology and geopolitics. So I thought, that material dimensions of it resonates very much with what you are looking into in your archaeological practices, and now moving, exploring cooking and so on. So, yeah.
Great.
Those are just...
I'll look those up,
yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
My dears, thank you so much. I think that, now for the sake of, having a laid back discussion, I will stop the recording. So, thank you all for that.